Hi, welcome to this month's Church Growth Minute. This month I want to address a subject that I'm very passionate about concerning church growth, and especially how a church perhaps would get out of a position of feeling like they can't grow or they can't go anywhere or they can't accomplish anything, and the pastor is just totally frustrated. And I run across this more often than you might think, where the pastor is just ready to quit practically because he just has out of options. And so it reminds me of a number of years ago, a fellow come up to me and said he was thinking about resigning his small church, and that he was going to go out and start a home missions church because he just couldn't seem to get his people to rally behind him, to get excited. It was a very small group, and they had been small for many years, and they just didn't have any hunger, desire, vision for growth. And he felt like he was just trying to, quote unquote, nail jello to a tree. It just wouldn't stick, it wouldn't take hold, nobody would get excited, and so on. And so he asked me if that was probably a good option, just to go out and start from fresh and build a new church. And, I could see that he was very frustrated, because oftentimes it seems like we carry a vision for growth in our church, and as pastors we feel like sometimes we're carrying it all by ourselves, and frankly that can become a rather overwhelming burden. But what I would have to ask a pastor in that situation is a couple of quick questions. Number one, did God call you to that city? And when I ask a man this, they are quickly to answer, yes, God called me. I felt a definite direction of the Holy Ghost to go to that particular city or to take that church. Very few men would take a church unless they felt like they were in the will of God. The second question I'd have to ask is, has God released you from a burden for that city? Because God places a burden within our heart for a reason. And yes, burdens can change, but they don't change every 6 months. And so in this particular case, the pastor said no. He says, I still have a tremendous burden for the city, but he says, I can't seem to go anywhere. And so if God has not released you of that burden, you need to ask yourself, does he really want you to go somewhere else? And then the third question I would ask is, has God told you to leave that church and go somewhere else? And unless God has given you some very clear and definite direction to resign your church and go start a new church, perhaps you need to think again as to whether that's the proper course of action. So if you answer no to all three of these questions, consider just how much advantage you have, even as a very small church with a small number of people. What kind of advantage you have over a brand new home missionary. For the most part, you probably have a building, and you have people sitting out in the congregation that you're able to preach to them, and they get behind your preaching and say amen. And believe me, when you don't have anyone out there to preach to, it's very difficult to do otherwise. And you probably have some tithe and offering that's coming in, howbeit it may not be very much. And when you give an altar call at the end of your sermon, somebody responds and goes to the altar. And so understand that even with a very small church that has no desire and hunger for growth and revival, you have a whole lot going for you. And you have a whole lot more than what the brand new home missionary has when he's starting from nothing. But what I would encourage you to do is, knowing that you have these advantages, now you need to begin thinking like a home missionary. In other words, quit frustrating yourself trying to motivate and use saints that are just not interested in working and laboring in the harvest. And so if you started fresh in a brand new location, well, everything would be up to you. You would be doing it all, from the inviting of people to church, to the teaching of the home Bible studies, to witnessing on a daily basis. Everything would be your responsibility. Well, Embrace that mindset. Embrace that philosophy. I'm going to build a church in the city that God called me to, and I'm going to use to my advantage the fact that I have a building, I have some saints, I have somebody to preach to, I have people to sing, I have folks to respond in the altar call. All of that is a tremendous advantage over somebody who's starting from ground zero. So what I want to begin to encourage you to do is to witness and to invite and to knock on doors, and do this in an abundance, just like as if you were a brand new home missionary starting in a brand new city. Knock on doors every Saturday that you possibly can. Buy yourself a van and put the name of the church on the side of it and start bringing kids to Sunday school. Start teaching home Bible studies. Not just one, teach several at a time. Throw yourself, give yourself to building a church. Begin to win souls and to build in a church as if you were a home missionary starting from scratch. You set yourself a goal to see 15 or 20 new people in attendance over the next 12 months from your own personal evangelism efforts. Set a goal that you want to see 5 or 6 people baptized and receive the Holy Ghost from the home Bible studies that you personally teach. In other words, make soul winning your top priority. And if you can get 1 or 2 of your existing saints to join in with you in reaching souls, well then, so much the better. But what I want to challenge you to do is begin to think and act like a home missionary who wakes up every morning and says to himself, you know, if it is to be, it's up to me. And then go forth on that day and do it as if you were the only individual that was going to begin to win souls in that city and begin to build yourself a church. What normally will happen is as you begin to fill the church with new converts, the personality and the dynamic of that church will change. The excitement level within the church will grow, and people will begin to catch the vision that you have for growth and revival. Then they will start buying into your vision for revival and will start helping you teach home Bible studies, teach Sunday school classes, invite people to church, work in the bus ministry, knock on doors. That is the key, I believe, to jump-starting a dead church and seeing revival start. If it is to be, it's up to me. And make sure you give it your best, just as if a home missionary would, and see what happens over the next 12 months. God bless. Thank you for being a part of this month's Church Growth Minute.